During a breakup in 2019, I told my ex about a crust punk I thought was funny. The crust punk had a newborn and a wife. My ex went to a bar, found the crust punk, and told this punk that I had been telling everyone that I was sleeping with the crust punk. A week passed and I heard this gossip through a family member. It had traveled through a lot of people to make its way back to me, and as you expect, I was mortified. The crust punk blocked me immediately, of course. I became isolated very quickly, and even if I was gonna speak up about it, I knew I wouldn't be heard. It's been 5 years, and the crust punks still keep me largely at a distance. Say what you will about men, but they know how to stick together. I was confused for a very long time as to why my ex would go to these lengths to isolate me. A year later, I retrieved some memories, which is something maybe only the traumatized can understand. And I realized that my ex had wronged me in more than one problematic ways. Ways that at the time I had no interest nor understanding about speaking on. This is the first time I learned that it seems like white men and or abusers often use gossip to control the narrative in an effort to isolate and ruin the name of the victim, should they come forward. I say white men because I've not seen a man of color in the scene participate in this sort of behavior. Also, I'll note that these were the millennial punks and not the Gen Z of the scene today. From what I can tell, the punks of today seem more socially focused, where the millennial punks are a lot more like, name 5 songs. A lot of things have changed since then. In 2019, they would call their exes crazy or liars. But since 2020, when I talk to a woman going through a breakup in the scene, they usually have a preface that there's a rumor going around that they're an abuser of some kind. I know of a person with all the privileges of a white man who was having an affair with a bigger woman. They were lying to their partners about it and spread a rumor that the bigger woman had groomed them. She forgave them, and they continued to hook up. And they did it again a year later. This person's friend, another person with white male privilege, was also hooking up with the same woman. I once asked them directly about it, and they said I would never sleep with them, as if it was despicable. She told me 30 minutes before that they had hooked up the night before. In this case, these people were not trying to protect themselves from anything they had done wrong, but they were trying to protect their reputation, as they feared that them being with a bigger woman would ruin that. It's fat phobia. When I witnessed this behavior and how successful these gossip attempts usually are, you can see how lately I've been a little skeptical when it comes to certain celebrities being canceled. I feel like a lot of celebrities that have been canceled in the last year are black women, and knowing that their power was handed to them by white men, it's hard for me to trust that these white men didn't just as easily take it away, should their reputation be threatened. And in a larger sense, is this not the pattern that we've seen? In the earlier parts of the decade, white men were finally being held accountable publicly. Would it be no surprise then that this group of people find a way to protect themselves? Did we think that they were just going to play along? Don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't believe that these celebrities have done what they're accused of, but I will say by and large, we are not holding them to the same standard that we are white men. Serial rapists get forgotten, and Lizzo exploiting her dancers ruins her entire career. And why does this work so well? Because of racism and sexism and other oppressions. Most racism doesn't look like what people think it looks like. My grandfather is a black man. My father's mixed. I'm weird looking. I'm passable. I've seen how people act when they don't think people of color are around. MLK remarked that racism is really held up by the white people maintaining the status quo. To me, this really reminds me of how behind closed doors, there's usually one person who is openly racist, and the people who know better are usually laughing it off or not holding them accountable. But it's a lot more than that. Real racism and sexism looks like gossip. It looks like criticism. They will criticize a marginalized person for logical reasons and never hold empowered counterparts to the same standards. They will say someone's illogical, stupid, incompetent, mean, and others will agree with them. And people are going to make mistakes, so that's why it seems logical. If you do one thing wrong, then you're stupid. But if a white man does 10 things wrong, he's adorable. Do I think these people are aware that the reason they treat marginalized people is because of their biases? No. Most people believe that they are good. Most people with power do not believe they are racist or sexist because they follow the rules as best they can. However, these marginalized groups have been presented to them as illogical, mean, stupid, incompetent, or whatever the biases are. So when they criticize them for this, everyone believes them immediately. This is why I've always been so ardent that representation matters in media. We need to see women in a good light. We need to see black people in a good light. We need to see members of the LGBTQ community in a good light. So when people criticize them, it seems as weird as it actually is. Well, these people are friends with marginalized people and will shit talk them as soon as they leave the room. And when there is no criticism to give, what I hear a lot is, I just don't like them. When people cancel white men, however, it almost is impossible to get it off the ground. There's always an excuse or evidence proving otherwise. I've talked to a lot of people in this town, and I literally have not met one single person, other than like survivors I've worked with, who believes women if they come forward about an abuser. Every person for 5 years has always said, I believe women, but in this case. And on the other hand, these people are really quick to believe the same things about men of color who have no accusations against them. All of these people have asked me if they needed to hate my ex-boyfriend, who's black, as if they were waiting for a reason to hate him. He's better than half of you guys. I would trust him years before I would trust most of you. And my other friend, a man of color, went through a breakup, and the ex spread that he was a stalker almost immediately. She would get her friend to bring him into her workplace so she could solidify the rumor. He never did anything to anybody. Above all, what I find most sad is how cancel culture has caused division between marginalized groups. Last year I had a group of friends that was also friends with my ex-girlfriend. They held events to uphold burgeoning artists, LGBTQ people, women, and people of color as a safe space. I would go to some of these events and I quickly felt unwelcome. I never knew why. I would make friends there, and then later when I saw those friends out, they would give me dirty looks and the silent treatment. By the end of the summer, I was completely ostracized. This felt so terrible. I can't even describe it. I cried over it a lot. I wondered what was wrong with me. I would try to go to the events and be kind, try to win the community. I wasn't sure how I lost. And it only got worse. It became clear to me that they must have spread rumors about me. And even to this day, I don't know what they possibly could have said. I remember when I was dating my ex-girlfriend, they didn't like her, and I would ask why she wasn't allowed to be near them, and they would say, I just don't like her. Eventually, I had a come to Jesus moment, and I realized I wasn't going to go where I wasn't valued. I moved on, found new friends, and learned to be happy regardless of the dirty looks I got wherever I went. Over the coming months, one by one, people would approach me about how these friends had wronged them and isolated them. They had ostracized multiple trans people, exploited one of these trans people for their resources, and were known to talk shit about the women they would work with to create events. What was once a safe space became splayed, and marginalized people had to find new groups of friends to accept them. A year later, I went to an event they used to pioneer. It was run by the music scene, which is extremely male-dominated. The artists at the event were already established in the community, and the focus on bringing learning to everyone had waned. I never knew why they did what they did or why they do what they do, but still to this day, when I make friends and they know them, I get ghosted. What I've learned from them more than anything is that cancel culture is what put the power back in the hands of the elite. And I think this is happening everywhere. Posting this, I know that if it gets read, I will probably be further bullied, isolated, canceled, what have you. But I'm tired of taking these beatings, lying down. I can already tell you what they'll do. The women will probably use tears and say that I'm being mean and that I should sit still and continue to take their beatings. The white men will say I'm crazy or lame or ugly. And they might both start some sort of cancelable rumor. I've seen it all before. It never has anything to do with what's right. It always has been about power and protecting status. But the longer I'm here, I realize that it doesn't matter, because there will always be victims of this. There will always be black women that threaten white women's power as given to them by the men. There will always be POC who scare the white majority because it forces them to confront how little they actually know about the world. There will always be men of color that white women can victimize themselves and manipulate. There will always be bigger women who only get to find love in secret, and there will always be women who know too much about a man. And for y'all, I'll be there. I see you.